Ancient machines once carved weather patterns directly into solid stone. This is the story of forgotten technology that could transcribe storms and sunlight, leaving behind artifacts that challenge our understanding of history. By the end, you will grasp how this lost science could revolutionize our approach to climate change. We will investigate how these devices harnessed the sky's raw energy and why their secrets vanished for centuries. What do you believe is our greatest lost connection to the natural world? A crumbling scroll, forgotten in a desert monastery, held the first clue. It described something called Sky-Scribes, devices that could capture the very image of a passing storm and carve it directly onto a slab of polished obsidian. For generations, historians read these words and saw only beautiful nonsense, the poetic fantasies of ancient priests. But then another text was found high in the Andes, and another in a tomb in Anatolia. Each one, separated by vast oceans and millennia, told a similar story. They spoke of machines that did not merely measure the weather, they translated it. They used the language of the sky itself, etching wind patterns, solar halos, and the intricate shapes of clouds into unyielding stone. The specific glyphs left behind were not random art. They match modern meteorological charts with an unsettling precision. A spiral groove corresponds exactly to the pressure map of a cyclone. A series of fine, radiating lines mirrors the effect of the sun breaking through an overcast sky. This was not a symbolic representation. It was a direct transcription, as if the atmosphere held a stylus and signed its name. The sheer impossibility of such a feat forces a single, haunting question. What kind of knowledge, what profound understanding of the natural world could have conceived of such a process? To find that answer, we must look not at the sky, but at the earth, at the very stones they used as their parchment. The secret was not in the machine alone, but in the stone it used. Ancient engineers operated on a principle we might call geomantic resonance. They believed that certain types of rock, particularly quartz and basalt, possessed a latent memory, a capacity to absorb and store the vibrational patterns of the world around them. These stones were not just passive blocks, they were living archives waiting for the right key to unlock their potential. The forgotten machines served as that key. They were masterful amplifiers and focusers, designed to take the wild, chaotic energy of a storm or the gentle pressure of a sunbeam and channel it into a single, coherent signal. This signal would then interact with the stone's crystalline structure, causing a physical change, a permanent engraving of the atmospheric data. The entire process can be likened to a phonograph for the sky. In a classic record player, a needle vibrates as it traces the grooves in a vinyl disc, translating those physical bumps into sound. Now, reverse that process. Imagine the weather itself is the complex music, a symphony of pressure, light, and electrical charge. The machine acts as the tone-arm and stylus, but instead of reading, it is writing. It focuses the sky's chaotic symphony into a precise, energetic beam that physically etches a new groove into a specially prepared lithic surface. The stone becomes the permanent record. This reveals a synthesis of sciences we are only now beginning to grasp. To achieve this, the builders needed a deep, intuitive understanding of geology, knowing exactly which stones had the right resonant properties. They also required a sophisticated knowledge of meteorology to correctly interpret and transcribe the sky's complex language. Theory, however, was not enough. To build a device that could literally draw with the wind, one needed the right physical components, pieces of a puzzle we are still struggling to reassemble. This crystal heart, often a large, geometrically perfect piece of piezoelectric quartz, was the true translator. It did not simply sit there, it listened. When the wind pushed against the machine's housing or the very air pressure of an approaching storm began to drop, these forces applied a subtle mechanical stress to the crystal lattice. This stress, this squeeze from the sky, caused the quartz to generate a small but precise electrical charge, yet its role was far more sophisticated than that of a simple battery. The crystal was also painstakingly tuned, reportedly painted with fine metallic alloys according to alchemical recipes, to make it resonate in sympathy with specific atmospheric conditions. A low, thrumming frequency for a distant hurricane, a higher, sharper vibration for a sudden cold front. This tuning turned the crystal into a selective ear, attuned only to the symphony of the weather. The faint whispers of the atmosphere, the pressure shifts and electrical murmurs we barely notice, were gathered and amplified. They were transformed into a powerful, oscillating energy field that pulsed around the machine's core. This field was the invisible chisel. It did not smash or grind the stone. Instead, it interacted with the stone's own latent memory, its geomantic resonance. The field's specific frequency and pattern would coax the stone's internal structure to realign, to reconfigure itself in a perfect mirror of the atmospheric data. A single lightning strike did not carve a jagged line. Instead, the immense electrical surge from that strike would cause the crystal amplifier to release a field so intense it prompted a microscopic realignment of the stone's minerals, leaving behind a permanent, complex pattern that encoded the bolt's power, path, and duration. The stone was not being carved, it was being persuaded to remember. This final stage of the process transformed the stone into a permanent, unchangeable record. The engraving was not a matter of physical force, not a chisel scraping away material. It was something far more subtle and profound, a molecular-level alteration. The powerful, focused energy field pulsing from the crystal amplifier did not cut the stone. Instead, it gently persuaded the stone to change its own mind. Under the precise influence of this field, and only when the surrounding air matched the exact humidity and temperature of the weather event being recorded, a localized phase change would occur within the rock itself. The crystalline lattice of minerals, say in a slab of granite or obsidian, would realign its atomic structure. It was as if the stone was momentarily softened, made receptive, and then frozen in a new configuration that perfectly mirrored the atmospheric data. Think of how a laser etches a design onto a piece of glass. The laser beam itself does not touch the surface. It applies intense, focused energy that permanently alters the material's structure at a microscopic level, creating a visible mark. The ancient machines operated on a similar principle, but they used the natural, amplified forces of the weather itself as their power source. The intricate lines and beautiful, swirling patterns we find on these artifacts are the direct result of this alchemical process. They are not random art or the whims of a carver. Every curve, every intersection, every depth of a groove is a direct, albeit encoded, representation of hard data. A deep, smoothly flowing channel might correspond to a long period of steady, heavy rain. A sharp, jagged interruption in that channel could mark a sudden clap of thunder. The stone holds a story, but it is written in a language we have only just begun to learn. To read this weather-writ stone, to understand the messages from a forgotten sky, we needed to find the interpreters. These Sky-Scribe priests were the vital link in this chain of forgotten science. They were not mere operators, but a specialized class of individuals raised from childhood for a single, sacred purpose. Their training was a lifetime of immersion, learning to read the world with a depth we can scarcely comprehend. They understood that the sky was not a blank slate, but a complex manuscript of shifting pressures, electrical potentials, and subtle thermal currents. Their senses were so finely tuned they could reportedly feel the approach of a distant thunderstorm hours before the first cloud appeared, a prickle in the air that signaled a change in the atmospheric charge. This was not magic, but a profound, cultivated sensitivity to the environment. Their knowledge was a powerful fusion of rigorous, empirical observation and an almost intuitive connection to the living world. They knew which cloud formation, a certain mackerel sky for instance, meant a shift in high-altitude winds that would require a slight adjustment to the crystal's tuning. They could interpret the scent of the air before a rain, using that data to prepare the lithic surface for the specific humidity of the coming storm. They were the living interface, the human element that translated the raw, chaotic data of the world into a language the machine could understand and inscribe. The calibration of the crystal amplifier was their most critical task. This was not a simple dial to be turned. Based on their readings of the sky, they would apply minute amounts of specialized alchemical solutions to the crystal's surface, solutions that would alter its resonant frequency to match the impending weather event. A single miscalculation, a fraction of a degree in alignment, could have catastrophic results. A misaligned machine would not simply fail. It could produce a garbled, meaningless record, a chaotic scar on the sacred stone that held no useful data. Worse, an improperly tuned amplifier could channel too much energy, shattering the crystal heart or even fracturing the stone tablet itself, destroying a priceless archive in an instant. This immense responsibility is echoed in oral traditions that have survived in isolated cultures. These stories speak of the sky-scribes singing to the stones, using specific harmonic chants and tonal vibrations to prepare the lithic surface, to awaken its geomantic resonance and make it receptive to the sky's inscription. The machine did the physical work, but the priest provided the intent, the focus, and the deep, respectful understanding that bridged the gap between the living earth and the dynamic sky. Their legacy is a testament to a world where humanity saw itself not as separate from nature, but as an active, conscious participant in its grand, ongoing conversation. These sky-scribes did not build their sanctuaries where people lived. They sought out the most remote and powerful places on Earth, constructing their temples on wind-scoured mountain peaks, vast volcanic plateaus, and isolated desert mesas. These were not arbitrary choices. Each location was a nexus, a perfect confluence of atmospheric purity and terrestrial power. The thin air of a high altitude provided an unobstructed connection to the sky, free from the dust and electrical interference of human settlements. More importantly, these sites were often positioned directly above powerful telluric currents, the slow-moving rivers of electrical energy that flowed deep within the Earth's crust. The very ground beneath these sanctuaries hummed with a latent power that the machines could tap into. The architecture itself was a masterpiece of integrated design. Walls were not just for shelter, they were sculpted to act as massive wind vanes, channeling the relentless mountain gales in specific directions to spin hidden turbines or create stable pressure zones around the central engraving chamber. Roofs were angled not just to shed snow, but to capture the first and last rays of the sun, focusing that solar energy onto thermal receptors that helped regulate the machine's internal temperature. Even rainwater was harvested with purpose, channeled through intricate aqueducts that used the water's flow to generate a small, consistent electrical charge, a trickle of power that kept the crystal heart stable during long periods of calm weather. The precision involved was breathtaking. Oral histories speak of master builders who would spend years at a potential site, observing the path of every shadow, measuring the direction of every prevailing wind, and listening to the subtle magnetic song of the rocks before laying a single stone. Moving the entire complex even a few meters in any direction could break this delicate harmony. A machine placed just off the peak's true apex might miss the strongest telluric current, its engravings coming out faint and blurred. A sanctuary built a short distance downslope could find itself shrouded in clouds, its view of the celestial patterns obstructed. This reveals an understanding of microclimates and Earth energies so advanced that our modern geophysical surveys are only now confirming what these ancient engineers knew intuitively. They were not just building on the land, they were building with it, weaving their structures into the very fabric of the local environment. So why go to such extreme lengths? Why place these vital records of the climate in the most inaccessible places imaginable? The answer may lie in the desire for a perfect, uncorrupted signal. These high sanctuaries were natural laboratories, isolated from the noise and change of human civilization. They were dedicated to recording the voice of the planet itself, a pure signal from the atmosphere and the Earth, untouched by the fires of villages or the clearing of forests. The records they created were meant to be eternal, stored in places that would remain stable and undisturbed for millennia, safe from floods, wars, and the slow creep of cities. They were building an archive for the ages, a library of stone meant to outlast every empire and every generation. But such perfect isolation came with a terrible vulnerability. When the civilization that built them finally fell, the knowledge of these mountain sanctuaries was the first to be lost, leaving the machines silent and waiting, their stories locked in stone for a world that had forgotten how to read them. Their ultimate ambition was to build a library for the ages. These weather-engraved stones were never intended for short-term forecasts, to warn a farmer of tomorrow's rain or a sailor of next week's wind. Their purpose was far grander. They were designed as permanent climate archives, a project conceived on a scale we would call geological. Our ancestors possessed a profound understanding that the true patterns of weather, the great rhythms of drought and deluge, of warming and cooling, did not reveal themselves in a single season or even a single lifetime. They knew these cycles operated over decades, centuries, and even millennia. A single obsidian slab, patiently inscribed year after year, could encapsulate the entire pressure signature of a 100-year storm cycle. The gradual, almost imperceptible deepening of a groove over generations might chart the slow retreat of the ice, a shift in planetary temperature captured in the very structure of the rock. This was not science for the present. It was a message in stone, carefully crafted for a future they would never see. They were attempting to solve the greatest puzzle of all, one that still challenges our most powerful supercomputers today, the prediction of long-term climate shifts. How do you prepare for a change that takes 500 years to manifest? You begin by creating a record that spans 1,000. This monumental task demanded a technology that was not just clever, but inherently robust. Paper burns, vellum crumbles, digital data corrupts, but stone endures. By choosing the most durable medium imaginable, they ensured their climatic library would outlast empires, languages, and even the very knowledge of how to read it. The sheer patience required for this endeavor is staggering to consider. A Sky-Scribe would dedicate his entire life to maintaining a single machine, adding perhaps one thin, precise line to a vast, spiraling pattern that told a story he himself would never fully understand. He was working for his great-grandchildren and for theirs. This was a civilization that thought in generations, not quarterly reports, building a legacy of data meant to guide humanity through climatic changes we are only now beginning to measure. The complete absence of any conventional power source is what makes these devices so utterly baffling to modern engineers. We find no soot from fires, no residues from chemical batteries, no gears for clockwork, and no space for any fuel. This void points toward a radical answer that the Sky-Scribes built passive systems, machines that lived and breathed with the environment. drawing all the power they needed directly from the world around them. They were masters of ambient energy harvesting, an art we are only now relearning. The most compelling theory suggests they exploited natural differentials, the subtle but constant imbalances that nature provides for free. A machine on a mountain peak could use the stark temperature difference between the sun-warmed stone of its housing and the frigid high-altitude air, creating a small but steady thermoelectric current. Another, positioned in a desert canyon, might have harnessed the immense static electricity built up by swirling dust devils, capturing those miniature lightning strikes. Some researchers point to the possibility of focused cosmic radiation, using specially shaped stone towers to channel the faint but constant rain of particles from space. Esoteric texts, long dismissed as allegory, describe lenses that could condense and store sunlight itself, not as heat, but as a latent potential, a bottled brilliance released only when the sky turned gray. Others speak of water not just as a resource but as a power conduit. They channeled meltwater through resonant chambers where the specific frequency of the flowing stream over precisely shaped stones would generate a harmonic vibration, a hum that could be transferred directly to the crystal heart. This was not a single solution but a suite of them, each machine perfectly adapted to siphon energy from its unique location. It implies a form of engineering that is fundamentally alien to our own, one that seeks not to conquer and extract, but to listen, to align, and to borrow. To truly grasp the sophistication of this approach, we must examine the most complete and revealing artifact ever unearthed. Buried within a sealed chamber on the windswept peak of Mount Lycaean in Greece lies a slab of dark basalt that tells a violent story. This stone, known to researchers as the storm scribe, is covered in a complex, spiraling pattern of grooves that seem to flow like frozen water. For decades, it was dismissed as an abstract ritual object, perhaps a map of the underworld. Then a geological team ran a series of advanced scans. They made a startling discovery. The intricate lines were not carved by any chisel or tool. The rock itself had been fundamentally changed, its internal magnetic signature altered along the precise paths of the grooves. The pattern was not scratched onto the surface, it was written into the stone's very soul, a permanent scar left by an immense and focused energy field. When researchers compared the spiral's unique signature to climate data from ancient ice cores, they found a perfect match. The pattern corresponds exactly to a documented period of catastrophic storm activity around 1200 BCE, a time of immense climatic upheaval that reshaped civilizations. This was not a symbolic representation, it was a direct data recording. Even more compelling is the local myth that has survived for millennia. It speaks of a time when Zeus, the god of the sky, gifted the priests of Lycaean with a lightning writer, a device that could capture the fury of the heavens and inscribe it upon sacred stone. For generations, this was seen as pure fantasy, a poetic metaphor for divine inspiration. Now we are forced to consider a different possibility. What if the myth was not about a god, but about a machine? What if the lightning writer was a real device, a Sky-Scribe that used the immense electrical charge of a thunderstorm as its power source, focusing that raw atmospheric violence to create the very magnetic inscription we see today? The machine itself is long gone, likely its precious components scavenged or returned to the earth by time, but the stone record remains a silent, unassailable witness. It provides one of the most tangible links we have between the realm of ancient myth and a potential, sophisticated technological reality. This single slab of basalt proves that the phenomenon was not confined to one continent or one culture. From the high Andes to the deserts of Anatolia, similar lithic records are being found, each one a silent testament to a global and forgotten conversation with the sky. From the windswept Mongolian steppes to the humid heart of the Maya rainforest, this forgotten art of inscription was a global phenomenon. We find wind-etched monoliths standing sentinel on the plains, their surfaces worn not by random erosion, but by patterns that mirror ancient jet stream data. Far across the world, rain-scored tablets from Mesoamerica bear grooves that correspond with astonishing accuracy to the intensity and duration of seasonal downpours over centuries. It is in the cultural variations, however, that we see the true depth of this knowledge. Each civilization adapted the core principle to their environment and their worldview. The Norse sagas, for instance, speak of frost runes said to be carved by the breath of the ice giants. This is not merely a fantastical story. It could be a mythological interpretation of a very real machine, one that used the explosive power of freezing moisture. Imagine a device that directed condensing, supercooled air onto a heated stone surface. The sudden, violent thermal shock would cause the stone to microfracture along precise, predetermined lines, creating a runic record of temperature and humidity. Similarly, ancient Indian Vedic texts describe intricate devices called Vayu yantras. These wind instruments were said to capture the force of the seasonal monsoons and imprint their complex directional shifts onto polished marble slabs. The machine's design, likely involving finely balanced wind vanes connected to a resonant stylus, would have been a perfect adaptation to the predictable yet powerful monsoon cycles of the subcontinent. This global distribution presents a profound puzzle. Did a single, advanced source culture spread this technology across the ancient world before vanishing from history, or is the explanation even more remarkable? Perhaps multiple cultures, through deep observation and a shared connection to the natural world, independently stumbled upon the same fundamental principle, that the sky's energy could be persuaded to write its own story in stone. The variations in their machines and their myths tell us as much about the people as the process. The Norse saw the hand of frost giants, the Maya venerated the rain gods. The Greeks heard the voice of Zeus. Each culture interpreted the awesome power of the weather through the lens of their own beliefs, yet all arrived at the same breathtaking technological endpoint. This was not a single invention, but a symphony of discovery played on every continent, a testament to a time when humanity listened more closely to the whispers of the world. The very stones themselves held the final secret. These were not random blocks of granite pulled from a quarry. The ancient engineers possessed a deep, empirical knowledge of geology, selecting only specific materials with unique hidden properties. Slate, with its layered structure, could be tuned to resonate with the vibrations of wind. Jade, prized for its toughness, was found to have a subtle piezoelectric quality, generating a tiny electrical charge when compressed by the shifting weight of the atmosphere. Stones rich in magnetite, a naturally magnetic mineral, were chosen to record the Earth's own magnetic field, which fluctuates with solar storms and other celestial events. The selection was precise, almost surgical. A stone without the right internal crystalline signature would simply not respond to the machine's focused energy. It would remain a silent, inert block, incapable of holding the sky's signature, but finding the right stone was only the beginning. Its preparation was a sacred, ritualized process that could take years. A chosen slab might be left exposed on a high cliff for an entire seasonal cycle, allowing the sun, wind, and rain to slowly anneal its structure, to teach it the rhythms of the world. It would then be painstakingly polished, not with simple abrasives, but with infusions of specific herbs and oils, mixtures whose chemical properties may have subtly altered the stone's surface tension, making it a more receptive canvas. The final step was a form of charging, aligning the stone with the power of the cosmos during specific lunar phases or planetary alignments. This was not mere superstition. We now understand that prolonged exposure to environmental stress, the constant thermal expansion and contraction, the subtle electrical charge of a thunderstorm, can create what material scientists call defects in a crystal lattice. These microscopic imperfections do not weaken the stone. Instead, they can make it more susceptible to influence from external energy fields, like tuning a radio receiver to a specific station. The ancient rituals of exposure and charging were, in effect, a brilliant, hands-on method of engineering these defects, of preparing the stone's internal structure to be permanently altered by the Sky-Scribe signal. They were not opening a mystical memory, they were carefully preconditioning a sophisticated data storage medium, using the slow, patient power of the natural world to create a lithic hard drive, ready to receive its first and only inscription. The knowledge did not vanish in a single, catastrophic event, but faded like a star at dawn. Its decline was a slow, quiet forgetting, a process of unraveling that took centuries. The first and most profound blow was a change in the climate itself. The very atmosphere these machines were built to record began to shift in ways that broke their delicate harmony. A prolonged period of global cooling or warming would have altered the fundamental baseline of the weather, making the Sky-Scribe's intricate calibrations obsolete. The crystal hearts, tuned for a world that no longer existed, fell silent, their resonant frequencies out of sync with a new and unfamiliar sky. This environmental shift was often followed by social collapse. The great empires that supported the remote sanctuaries crumbled. Trade routes that supplied rare minerals for the alchemical solutions were severed. The priestly class, whose members dedicated their entire lives to this singular art, was disbanded or absorbed into new religious orders that no longer understood the old science. The training, passed down orally from master to apprentice over generations, was interrupted and then lost forever. A deeper philosophical shift may have also played a role. As humanity's focus turned from understanding nature to conquering it, from aligning with the world to extracting from it, the subtle art of listening to the sky may have seemed obsolete. Why patiently record a storm when you can build a wall to keep it out? The technology was not destroyed out of malice, but simply abandoned, its purpose no longer fitting the spirit of the age. The great machines, left unattended on their mountain peaks, slowly surrendered to the elements. Their precious crystal hearts were likely scavenged for jewels or ground into powder for medicines. The empty structures were repurposed, becoming temples to new gods or shelters for shepherds. The engraved stones, the very heart of the archive, suffered the cruelest fate. Without their original context, they were misunderstood. Later generations, looking upon the intricate spirals and grooves, saw only beautiful, abstract art. They were viewed as sacred idols, not for the data they held, but for their mysterious appearance. They became curiosities, altar stones for religions that had forgotten the sky, their true meaning buried under layers of myth. The story of the lightning rider became the myth of Zeus. The frost runestones became the breath of ice giants. The profound, empirical science of a previous age was reduced to fantastical stories of gods and monsters. The knowledge fragmented, surviving only as cryptic phrases in epic poems, as strange diagrams in alchemical texts, and as local legends whispered in villages near the old sanctuaries. It became a ghost in the machine of history, a faint echo waiting for a time when our own science would be ready to hear it again. That time is now. The quest to rediscover this lost art has begun, not with shovels and brushes, but with magnetometers and spectral analyzers. A quiet revolution is unfolding in research laboratories around the world. The engraved stones, once dismissed as ritual art, are now being treated as sophisticated data storage devices. Geologists and atmospheric physicists are collaborating in ways never seen before, using tools their predecessors could not have dreamed of. They pass three-dimensional laser scanners over the intricate grooves of a basalt slab, mapping every microscopic imperfection with a precision of a fraction of a millimeter. These digital maps are then fed into complex algorithms designed to find patterns, to decode the language of the weather. The results are not merely suggestive, they are startlingly specific. A particular spiral pattern on a stone from Anatolia was found to match, with unnerving accuracy, the paleoclimate data from a Greenland ice core for the same 200-year period. The stone and the ice, one from a dry mountain, the other from a frozen desert, told the same story of a prolonged global drought. This is not a coincidence. It is corroboration. The stones are speaking, and we are finally learning how to listen. To test this hypothesis, scientists have begun ambitious replication experiments. Inside controlled atmospheric chambers, they place modern piezoelectric crystals, similar to the theorized heart of the ancient machines, against samples of prepared slate and quartzite. They then simulate the conditions of a passing storm, carefully manipulating air pressure, humidity, and even introducing small, controlled electrical charges to mimic the feel of distant lightning. The goal is not to instantly carve a stone, but to observe the most minute changes. Using hyperspectral imaging, they look for the faintest alterations in the rock's surface chemistry, the first signs of a molecular realignment. They have documented that under specific resonant frequencies, the stone does indeed change, absorbing the energy and altering its reflective signature in a permanent way. It is a faint echo of the ancient process, but an echo nonetheless. While a fully functional Sky-Scribe remains beyond our grasp, each failed experiment is a lesson. Each subtle change detected in the lab is a clue. We are slowly reverse engineering a science that was once second nature, piecing together a puzzle whose final image could change everything. If we can truly learn to read these lithic libraries, we would gain access to a high-resolution climate record stretching back thousands of years, a baseline of planetary health that could utterly transform our understanding of the changes happening today. The search is no longer about proving a myth. It is about recovering a lost wisdom that our future may desperately need. This discovery shatters the comfortable, linear timeline of human progress we have held for so long. We are taught a story of gradual ascent, from stone tools to steam engines, from primitive superstition to modern science. The existence of these machines demands we reconsider that entire framework. It reveals that technological advancement is not a single, straight highway. It is a vast, branching tree, with some limbs growing to incredible heights before they are pruned by time and forgotten. The Sky-Scribes represent one such branch, a path of development that achieved a profound understanding of energy, resonance, and material science, but through a completely different lens than our own. Theirs was not a physics of combustion and conquest, but of harmony and subtlety. They did not seek to overpower the storm with a seawall, but to listen to its voice and persuade it to write its own name. This was not magic. It was a sophisticated, applied science built on principles we are only now beginning to formally recognize, like piezoelectricity and resonant frequency. They simply understood how to use these principles in an integrated, holistic way, weaving them into the very fabric of their culture and their relationship with the planet. This single realization cracks open a door to a forgotten wing of human ingenuity. If one such technology existed, perfected, and then lost, what else might be waiting in the silent archives of history? Could there have been lost sciences of plant communication, of telluric navigation, of healing through harmonic sound? The accomplishments of our ancestors can no longer be dismissed as mere myth or primitive ritual. They may have been master engineers of their world, possessing a kind of wisdom that our own, more aggressive approach to technology has blinded us to. Their legacy, etched in stone and scattered across the globe, is a humbling reminder that our current technological peak is not the only one humanity has ever reached. We must now look at every ancient mystery, from the precise stonework of Machu Picchu to the acoustic wonders of ancient amphitheaters, with fresh and wondering eyes. These lithic libraries offer a dataset unlike any other. We have ice cores from Greenland, layers of ancient snowfall that trap tiny air bubbles, telling us about past atmospheres. We have tree rings, their width revealing years of good rain or punishing drought. But these are proxies, indirect clues we must carefully interpret. The stones are different. They are not a secondary record. They are a primary source, a direct transcription of the sky's own voice at a specific location. Imagine having a high-fidelity recording of a thunderstorm from 3,000 years ago, not just a written description of the damage it caused. That is the potential locked within these engraved surfaces. A single slab from a mountain sanctuary could tell us the exact barometric pressure of a passing hurricane, the precise wind shear of a tornado, the minute-by-minute humidity shift as a cold front swept across a valley. This is hyper-local, high-resolution climate data on a scale we can barely generate today, let alone recover from the deep past. This information is not just a historical curiosity. It is the missing piece in our greatest modern puzzle. Our most advanced climate models struggle with certain variables, particularly the frequency and intensity of extreme weather events over long time scales. How common were 100-year storms 1,000 years ago? Were ancient droughts more severe or simply longer? The stones could provide the hard data to answer these questions, giving us a true baseline for a pre-industrial world. With this knowledge, we could refine our predictions, moving from broad, global forecasts to precise, regional anticipations. We could understand not just that the climate is changing, but exactly how it will change for a specific coastline, a particular agricultural region, a vulnerable city. The very technology we dismissed as myth could become the most powerful tool in our arsenal for adapting to the future. This is the ultimate irony. The ancients built a library to guide their descendants through climatic shifts they knew were inevitable. We are those descendants standing at the doorway of that very library, finally recognizing the writing on the walls. The key to navigating our uncertain future may have been carved in stone long before our civilization ever began. The beautiful spirals etched into the stone are a locked archive. Our greatest challenge now is not finding these artifacts, but learning how to read them. Are these intricate grooves a literal graph, plotting atmospheric pressure against the span of centuries? Could they be a symbolic language, mapping the movements of long-forgotten weather deities? Or is this a complex data format, a kind of lithic software that requires a unique decryption key to access? The patterns are consistent, but their grammar remains a mystery. To solve it, researchers are turning to our most modern tools. Advanced artificial intelligence now scans high-resolution models of the stones, its algorithms searching tirelessly for repeating sequences, for mathematical rhythms hidden within the apparent chaos. The hope is to find a pattern that syncs perfectly with a known, datable event from the paleoclimate record, a seasonal monsoonal shift or a major volcanic eruption that darkened the skies for years. This would be the Rosetta Stone for the Sky-Scribes, a single slab where we know both the inscription and the event that caused it. Finding that one key would unlock the entire library. The search is a monumental fusion of disciplines, a painstaking cross-referencing of ancient myth, precise geological analysis, and our growing understanding of past climates. It is a slow, deliberate conversation with the deep past, one where we are only just learning how to ask the right questions. The myths of old are littered with divine tools for mastering the sky. Look past the epic poetry and the godly drama, and you will find a consistent, startling pattern. The Greek figure Aeolus was not just a king, he was the keeper of the winds, entrusted with a specific device, a leather bag that contained all the storm winds. Could this be a garbled description of a complex pressure regulation chamber, a component vital to stabilizing the internal environment of a Sky-Scribe before an engraving began? Then there is the mighty Thor, whose hammer, Mjolnir, was said to create thunderclaps when it struck. What if this was not a weapon, but the resonant striker of a massive machine, a tuned weight that would fall with a percussive boom onto a piezoelectric crystal, initiating the inscription process during a lightning storm? The Hindu god Indra, ruler of the heavens, is consistently depicted wielding the Vajra, a thunderbolt weapon. This is often described not as a simple lightning bolt, but as a fashioned metallic device, a scepter of immense power. Could the Vajra be the stylus itself, the focused energy emitter that wrote upon the stone? The connections do not stop there. These gods are almost never described as creating weather out of pure chaos. Their actions are precise, almost procedural. They release a specific wind from a bag. They strike at a precise moment to create a thunderclap of a certain magnitude. They wield a lightning bolt as a deliberate tool. This is not the behavior of capricious deities. It is the behavior of operators, of technicians using sophisticated equipment. The stories say the gods did not just cause the weather, they documented it. They gave it form and record. This blurring of the line between advanced technology and divinity is a classic symptom of what happens when profound knowledge is lost. The operators of the Sky-Scribes, with their ability to command the very forces of nature and leave a permanent mark, would have been indistinguishable from gods to later generations. Their machines became divine weapons. Their rituals became the whims of the gods. Their data archives became the legends of a golden age when the heavens spoke directly to humanity. The power to inscribe the sky's story into stone is not a neutral force. It comes with a profound and immediate ethical weight. If our labs succeed in rebuilding a Sky-Scribe, we must confront a difficult question. What is the responsible use of such a technology? The ability to permanently engrave environmental data is also the ability to create immense, unchangeable land art, to carve corporate logos into mountain ranges, or to etch political slogans across entire geological formations. The very permanence that made the stones such perfect archives also makes the technology dangerously potent. Who would be given the authority to decide what gets written into the bedrock of our planet? Would it be governments, scientific bodies, or private corporations? The potential for misuse is as vast as the landscapes it could alter. Beyond the risk of vandalism on a continental scale, there is a more subtle danger. The original machines worked by tapping into delicate environmental equilibriums, the subtle flows of telluric energy and atmospheric charge. Their operators acted with a deep, ingrained reverence, a sense of participating in a sacred conversation. They understood that you do not shout at the sky, you listen. A modern attempt to restart such a process, driven by corporate funding or national prestige, might lack that essential patience. What if our reactivation of a single machine inadvertently disrupts a local magnetic field, disorienting migratory species that have relied on that signal for millennia? Could our focused energy drawing destabilize a fragile rock face or trigger a minor seismic event? We are playing with systems we do not fully comprehend, systems the ancients understood intuitively. The core of the issue lies in the chasm between two worldviews. The Sky-Scribes saw their role as stewards, as humble listeners recording the voice of a living world. Our modern technological paradigm is often one of domination and extraction. We see a resource and we ask how to use it. We see a process and we ask how to scale it for profit. Applying that mindset to this rediscovered science would be a catastrophic misunderstanding. It would be like using a sacred temple bell as a factory alarm. The sound is the same, but the meaning, the intention, and the consequence are utterly different. The past offers us more than just a technical schematic. It offers a philosophical framework, a wisdom that treated the act of recording as a form of reverence. Before we even attempt to power up a reconstructed machine, we must first rebuild that sacred respect, or we risk awakening a power we are not wise enough to wield. A real-time engraving was more than a simple recording. As the machine's energy field coaxed a fresh groove into the stone, a master scribe would not see a single event, but the opening sentence of a story still being written. The initial curve of a spiral, the specific depth of a new line, these were the first words of a coming storm. A trained interpreter, watching the inscription form, could read the nascent pattern and anticipate the entire chapter. A groove that began with a shallow, hesitant scratch might signal a weak weather front, a passing shower. But if that same groove deepened rapidly, its path turning sharp and decisive, it foretold a violent squall gathering strength just over the horizon. This was not mystical divination. It was high-resolution data analysis in its most primal form. The priest watching the stone was seeing a live meteorological feed, interpreting the atmospheric pressure and electrical charge as they manifested physically before his eyes. He could, in essence, watch the future take shape. This predictive power would have placed the Sky-Scribes at the very heart of their society. A warning of a coming drought, delivered months in advance, meant the difference between a stored harvest and a famine. A prediction of an unusually harsh winter allowed a village to stockpile fuel and reinforce shelters. The scribe who could accurately forecast the weather held the power of life and death over kings and commoners alike. He was the ultimate intermediary, the sole translator for the unpredictable temperament of the gods. This explains the intense secrecy that shrouded their craft. The knowledge was not hidden out of mere superstition, but to protect its integrity and its power. If the tuning of the crystal or the preparation of the stone became common knowledge, the process could be corrupted. A rival faction might use a poorly calibrated machine to generate a false prediction, creating panic or manipulating grain prices. The scribes had to guard their science as a state secret because in a world ruled by the weather, it was the ultimate strategic resource. The catastrophic loss of this predictive ability would have been a death blow to any civilization that relied on it. When the last scribe died without an apprentice, the intricate dance between humanity and the sky was broken. The people were left deaf, staring at a silent stone and a suddenly incomprehensible heaven, vulnerable to every whim of a climate they could no longer foresee. The thin line between recording the past and predicting the future was the very thread that connected them to their world, and when it snapped, it plunged them into a new dark age. This gap in the evidence is the single greatest obstacle to understanding the Sky-Scribes. We possess their library, but the printing press itself has vanished. The grand machines that once hummed with the sky's energy have been utterly erased from the archaeological record. Not a single intact device has ever been recovered from any of the remote sanctuaries. We find the beautifully inscribed stones, the sacred texts describing their operation, and the monumental architecture designed to channel the wind and sun. But the heart of the operation, the intricate device that married these elements, is gone. The reason for this complete absence lies in their very construction. The machines were likely built from a combination of highly specialized and inherently ephemeral materials. Their frameworks were probably crafted from specific, resonant woods, chosen for their acoustic properties but destined to rot away to dust. The critical focusing arrays and tuning mechanisms would have been made from unique metal alloys, perhaps alchemical blends of copper, silver, and rare earth elements, metals that would have been the first targets for looters and would have corroded into unrecognizable green powder over the centuries. Most devastating of all, the crystal hearts, the piezoelectric cores of the entire system, were undoubtedly priceless. They were either systematically looted for their perceived magical or monetary value, or they simply shattered over time, their precise geometric structures unable to withstand earthquakes, freezing temperatures, or falling debris. This leaves modern researchers in a profoundly difficult position. Any attempt to reconstruct a Sky-Scribe is an exercise in reverse engineering based entirely on inference. We have the output, the engraved stone, and we have the user manual, the cryptic texts, but we are missing the machine itself. It is the equivalent of trying to rebuild a modern supercomputer using only a printed photograph and a poem describing what the screen displays. You might understand its purpose, but the pathway to achieving it remains a complete mystery. Every new fragment found at a site, however, sends a ripple of excitement through the research community. A shard of an unusual glass-like substance, a lump of corroded metal that does not match any known local ore, a stone socket that seems designed to hold a spherical object of a specific size. These are the puzzle pieces. A recently discovered clay model from a Mesopotamian site, for instance, depicts a priest holding a strange, lattice-like object. For generations, it was catalogued as a ritual basket. Now, some researchers are wondering if it is a scaled-down representation of a Sky-Scribe's resonant crystal housing. Each of these tiny clues is a potential window into the machine's inner workings, a faint whisper from the past hinting at the magnificent and complex symphony of parts that once translated the chaos of the sky into the perfect order of stone. Perhaps the machines did not write with lightning but with song. A compelling alternative theory, known as the acoustic resonance hypothesis, proposes that sound itself was the primary engraving force. This idea gains traction when you examine the ruins of the high sanctuaries with fresh eyes. Their most enigmatic chambers are not simple rooms. They are architectural marvels with parabolic walls, domed ceilings, and strangely angled corridors, all of which appear perfectly designed to capture, amplify, and focus sound. The entire structure may have functioned as a massive acoustic lens. The theory suggests these devices were listening for sounds far beyond human hearing. They would have captured the deep, rumbling infrasound of a distant thunderstorm, a vibration so low our ears cannot register it, or the high-pitched ultrasonic hiss of the jet stream tearing across the sky. The machine's core, its crystal heart, would then act as a transducer, converting these silent vibrations into powerful, audible frequencies. This concentrated sonic energy was then directed, like a laser beam of pure sound, onto the waiting stone surface. We know this is not mere speculation. Modern science uses ultrasonic vibrations to cut and engrave some of the hardest materials known to us, from titanium to diamond. At the precise frequency and immense amplitude, sound waves can indeed cause fatigue and fracture at a molecular level, forcing a solid material to change its very structure. If this hypothesis is correct, it means the stones are not weather photographs but weather recordings. Each intricate groove is not a barometric pressure line, but a sonic waveform, a frozen moment of a storm's roar or a wind's whisper. The spiral on the Mount Lycaean stone would not be a pressure map of a cyclone, but the audio signature of that cyclone, a literal recording of its howl captured in solid rock. This realization reframes the entire endeavor. The Sky Scribes were not just meteorologists, they were audio engineers on a planetary scale, building concert halls to record the symphony of the atmosphere. This acoustic hypothesis opens an entirely new and fertile path for experimental replication. Instead of trying to generate electrical fields, researchers can now focus on creating powerful, focused sound waves at resonant frequencies, aiming them at prepared stone samples to see if they can coax the same kind of permanent, data-rich inscriptions out of the silent rock. These remote sanctuaries were not chosen for their convenience, but for their connection to the Earth itself. Many of these high-altitude sites are famously alleged to sit directly upon ancient pathways known as ley lines. While the very idea of these alignments is often dismissed by mainstream science as pseudoscience, we cannot ignore a compelling physical reality. The locations where these machines were built consistently exhibit measurable and often extreme geophysical anomalies. The ground beneath them frequently hums with unusual magnetic activity, creating compass deviations that would have been easily detectable with even simple lodestones. Some sites show slightly elevated levels of natural background radiation, a subtle but persistent energy. Others are positioned directly above powerful subterranean aquifers, where the constant flow of water deep underground generates a faint electrical charge through a process called the electrokinetic effect. It is possible the ancient engineers were not following mystical lines on a map, but were empirically mapping a very real planetary energy grid. They were identifying nodal points, specific locations where the Earth's own power was most accessible and potent. By placing their Sky Scribes at these precise intersections, they could tap into a stable, terrestrial power source to supplement the wild and fluctuating energy of the atmosphere. The Earth's steady hum could have provided a baseline current, a foundation that stabilized the entire system against the violent surges of a thunderstorm or the dead calm of a windless day. This reveals a technology that saw no separation between the sky above and the ground below. It was a single, integrated circuit. The machine was the connection point, the place where the breath of the atmosphere met the heartbeat of the planet. This required a worldview so advanced it seems almost futuristic to us now, a holistic understanding of the Earth as a single, living, and energetic system. The builders did not see a dead rock, they saw a complex organism, and they learned how to listen to its pulse. This ancient intuition is finding a startling echo in the most cutting-edge science of our own time. The modern field of Earth system science is now modeling our planet in a very similar way, not as a collection of separate spheres, but as a deeply interconnected whole, where the geosphere, hydrosphere, and atmosphere are in constant dynamic conversation. The Sky Scribes were not just recording the weather, they were participating in that planetary conversation, using a language of energy and stone that we are only just beginning to comprehend. The quiet hum of the Sky Scribes' machines may have faded, but their intellectual echo refused to die. It resurfaced centuries later in the smoke-filled laboratories of medieval alchemists. These men, often dismissed as mystics chasing gold, were in fact the reluctant inheritors of a broken technological legacy. Their entire worldview, centered on transmuting base metals and capturing the elusive quintessence, bears the distinct fingerprints of the forgotten weather engineers. The core alchemical process of solve et coagula, to dissolve and to coagulate, is a direct parallel to the stages of preparing a lithic archive. The initial dissolution involved purifying the base material, the stone, through exposure and ritual cleansing, stripping it of its worldly impurities to make it a receptive vessel. The separation was the careful tuning of the crystal amplifier, isolating the specific resonant frequency of an approaching storm from the chaotic noise of the atmosphere. Finally, coagulation was the engraving itself, the moment the sky's energy persuaded the stone to solidify into a new, permanent form, capturing the quintessence of the weather event itself. This was not a metaphor. For the alchemists, it was a literal, physical process they were trying to replicate without understanding the original machinery. The most famous of all alchemical quests, the search for the Philosopher's Stone, takes on a startling new meaning in this light. Could this legendary substance, said to transform lead into gold and grant immortality, be a deeply corrupted memory of the perfect receptive stone? The Sky-Scribe spent generations searching for that one ideal lithic canvas, a stone with such perfect geomantic resonance that it could record the sky's voice with flawless clarity. A substance capable of such a miraculous transformation, of turning a blank slab into a data-rich artifact, would indeed have been seen as possessing magical properties. The alchemists, working from fragmented manuscripts and half-remembered legends, reduced a precise engineering specification to a mystical symbol. They were trying to recreate the effect without the cause, the goal without the tool. This devolution from hard technology to esoteric symbol is the fate of all lost science. When the context vanishes, the practical steps become ritual. The precise calibration of a crystal with alchemical solutions becomes the search for a universal solvent. The act of focusing atmospheric energy becomes the invocation of celestial spirits. The lineage is clear, a river of knowledge that sank underground, only to reappear miles downstream as a tainted spring. The alchemists were not fools. They were archaeologists of a lost physics, piecing together a puzzle with most of the pieces missing. Their fervent quest a silent testament to the magnificent reality of what had been lost. A laboratory in Greece now hums with the ghost of that ancient ambition. At the University of Thessaly, a team of engineers and geologists has built a bridge across the centuries, a modern prototype that seeks to validate the physics of the Sky-Scribes. Their device is a fascinating hybrid of old and new. At its heart sits a large array of piezoelectric crystals, similar in principle to the theorized crystal heart of the original machines. This array is connected directly to a sophisticated weather station on the roof, which feeds a constant stream of real-time atmospheric data, barometric pressure, wind speed, and humidity into a digital control system. This computer then translates that live weather data into specific commands, driving a focused ultrasonic transducer, a device that emits a powerful, precise beam of sound. This sonic stylus is aimed at a prepared slate tablet, a surface chosen for its known resonant properties. The goal is not to create a beautiful spiral, but to achieve the most fundamental proof of concept, to see if the weather can be persuaded to write its own signature, however crudely, into the stone. The early results are more than theoretical. Researchers have documented visible micro-fracturing on the slate surface, a delicate, web-like pattern of fine lines that directly corresponds to the intensity of passing wind gusts. A stronger gust creates a deeper, more pronounced fracture. A period of calm leaves the stone virtually untouched. This is a crude imitation, to be sure, relying on modern electronics to do the work of ancient intuition and alchemical tuning. Yet it represents a crucial first step out of the realm of pure speculation and into the world of testable, repeatable science. Success for this prototype would not mean we have rebuilt a Sky-Scribe, but something perhaps more important. It would prove that the core principle of translating atmospheric energy into a permanent lithic inscription is not just a poetic myth, but a plausible, physical reality. This single experiment could provide the foundational evidence that our ancestors were not dreaming, but engineering, using a lost branch of physics to hold a conversation with the sky. Our modern world neatly divides science, art, and faith into separate rooms of the human experience, yet the Sky-Scribes refuse to be categorized so easily. Were these intricate devices scientific instruments? Absolutely. They gathered precise atmospheric data with a methodology we are still struggling to replicate. But were they also objects of profound religious significance? Without a doubt. The entire process was a sacred ritual, a form of communion with forces perceived as divine. And the results, those beautifully spiraling lithic records, are undeniably art. They are masterpieces of form and pattern, capturing the fleeting beauty of a cloud or the awesome power of a storm in a permanent medium. The true revelation is that for the people who built them, these three domains were a single, unified whole. To measure the wind was to listen to the breath of a god. To record a lightning strike was to capture the signature of the divine, and to inscribe that data with such elegant precision was an act of worship, a way of honoring the sublime beauty of the natural world. Their technology was not separate from their spirituality. It was an expression of it. This is the most profound lesson these forgotten machines offer our hyper-specialized society. We have experts who study the atmosphere, and artists who represent it, and theologians who contemplate its creator, yet these voices rarely speak to one another. The Sky-Scribes embody a holistic wisdom where knowledge was not a collection of isolated facts, but a living tapestry. Understanding a storm required empirical observation, spiritual reverence, and an artistic sensibility to translate its chaos into a coherent, beautiful form. This integrated perspective is what we have lost and what we may desperately need to rediscover. The power of their legacy lies not in the machine itself, but in the worldview that created it, a reminder that the deepest truths are often found at the intersection of different ways of seeing. This rediscovered art could fundamentally reshape our relationship with the planet. We stand at the threshold of a new era where science and stewardship merge into a single, powerful expression. Picture artists working hand in hand with climatologists, not with brushes and paint, but with focused energy and resonant stone. Together, they could create breathtaking monuments that are far more than sculptures. These would be data-rich narratives, telling the intricate story of a place's climate across centuries. A public park might feature a central plaza of polished granite, its surface a complex map of swirling grooves. One spiral could capture the atmospheric pressure of the day the Paris Agreement was signed, a permanent, tactile record of a global promise. Another set of lines might encode the weather patterns from a catastrophic wildfire season, making the abstract reality of climate change something you can literally run your fingers over. These are not hypothetical ideas. They are the logical extension of a principle we know worked, now supercharged by our modern understanding. Scientists could deploy small, passive engraving units in the most vulnerable and remote locations, from the melting permafrost of the Arctic to the heart of the Amazon rainforest. These durable sentinels would require no batteries, no maintenance, simply recording the slow, profound changes in their environment year after year, decade after decade. They would create an indestructible library for our descendants, a baseline of planetary health written directly into the landscape itself. This is the ultimate potential of reviving this lost science. It is not about rebuilding old machines for their own sake. It is about spawning a new fusion of disciplines, a powerful medium for communicating across deep time. We could leave behind messages that are both beautiful and brutally honest, a legacy of stone that speaks of our choices and their consequences. The drive to unlock this potential, to once again give the sky a permanent voice, is what fuels the quiet, determined search in laboratories and at ancient sites around the world. These forgotten machines are far more than a historical mystery. They stand as a monumental testament to human ingenuity, a brilliant echo from a past that understood its relationship with the natural world in a way we have since forgotten. The Sky-Scribes did not seek to conquer the storms or control the sunlight. Their ambition was profound harmony, a deep desire to listen, to understand, and to preserve that understanding in the most permanent way imaginable. From the geomantic principles that tapped into the Earth's own pulse to the global tapestry of myths they inspired, their story fundamentally reshapes our view of history. It reveals a past alive with sophisticated science, where the line between technology and spirituality was beautifully blurred. The potential locked within their Lithic archives is staggering, offering a high-resolution window into ancient climates that could recalibrate our entire approach to modern environmental change. But the most vital takeaway is not the machine itself. It is the profound lesson in working with natural forces, not against them. As we stand on the brink of potentially rediscovering this lost art, we have a choice. We can approach it with the same reverence and wisdom as the Sky-Scribes, seeing ourselves as humble participants in a planetary conversation. Their legacy is a challenge and an invitation, a call to build a future where our technology serves not just our immediate needs, but the enduring health of the world we call home. If this journey into the intersection of myth and machine has captivated you, we would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe for more explorations into the greatest enigmas of our past.